Hey there friends, Kevin here from the MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be reviewing an album that Mr. Alan Harrington of Twitter, Mr. Metalcore on Twitter, said was the album of the year right when it was announced. This is our review of No Eternity in Gold by Like Moths To Flames. Before we get started, please follow MSOTD Rocks on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You'll get the Song of the Day feature on those platforms. It's a 30-second feature to get in the know with a lot of bands that are big in the scene and the emerging independent ones as well. You can also talk to us on those platforms, find out anytime anything gets released. And on Tuesdays, you get our IGTV videos. It's a behind-the-scenes look of what's happening here for you to kind of get a behind-the-scenes look at what's going on. And join us on Instagram Live every single Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central. It's an hour. You come talk to us. Anything can happen. Please also subscribe to this YouTube channel because not only do you get these album review videos, you also get the top 10 list that I put together. You get my Kevin Figures Out series where I try and figure out if I like certain bands or not that I'm not that well versed in. You also get our special videos about emerging bands in the scene today. And of course, because we're coming up towards the end of the year-end awards, which is always a whole bunch of time for controversy and opinion. So I'd love to see what you guys think, and you guys can see what I think. And also on this YouTube channel, this is where the Chord Progression podcast lives. That is the podcast that we have where we're interviewing all the emerging rock and metal bands in the scene today, whether independent or signed. And it'll be the place where you will get in the know with them on a whole nother level than you will at any other juncture. We've interviewed bands like Saul, Throw the Fight, Kill the Lights, Outlier, Boys of Fall, you name it, we are doing it and we have done it. So you can listen on Spotify, Podcast, Google Play, and iHeart Radio, or you can watch the interviews right here on YouTube. Links, description below for everything. Like, share, subscribe, pass it on, whatever you do. But let's get on to it. Before we get going, let's take a look at their previous album, Dark Divine, which came out in 2017. And when it came out, it was received with mixed reviews. Original Rock gave it an 8.5 out of 10, saying that it was well produced, it had this punchy kind of sound to it, and you couldn't judge the album just on the first two tracks. Then Louder Sound gave it a 4.5 out of 10, saying that it followed this very rigid formula that a lot of modern metalcore really follows. Myself, though, I never really got into Dark Divine because, again, it came out in 2017. I didn't really jump into metalcore until 2019. However, I do really like the song No One Left to Sink on there. It is on my workout playlist, and I like the fact that it's metalcore, but it has that consistent, clean vocal style to it. It's really different than a lot of stuff I've heard from Like Moths To Flames. So I really do like that kind of difference in there. But now let's jump into this new stuff. Now let's go to No Eternity in Gold, but let's go back to 2019 first, when in May, Like Moths To Flames ended up leaving Rise Records with some of the stuff already put together. So they ended up producing and releasing the rest of this independently along with UNFD. And when I was taking a look at some of the early reviews for it, after I'd already listened to the album and put this together, they were getting a lot of like 8 out of 10, so a lot of 4 out of 5 at the same time too. So this is being received rather positively from the onset, but let's go into my kind of review and see what we think. So let's start out with the composition, construction, instrumentation on No Eternity in Gold. And when I really take a look at it, what Like Moths To Flames did here was they really stuck in their wheelhouse. So when you listen to this album, you're going to get a very consistent sound on it that a lot of fans of the metalcore scene and big fans of Like Moths To Flames, in my opinion, will really love. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is you're going to get this heavy, brutal style metalcore into the verses with heavy drumming, very fast-paced, very dynamic in terms of the different fills they're going to work with, and the down-tuned guitars are going to have that heavy feel, so you're really going to get that anger to be put out there. Then when you go to the choruses, you're going to get the same dynamic drumming style, but instead you're going to get this more melodic and a little bit more higher-pitched construction style on those guitars. And when I took a look at it, I was fine with it, especially when they use this more higher distortion on the guitars on the lead throughout the whole entire song list, because what they did was when they had those verses on there and you had this heavier style, you had this lighter style lead guitar at the same time as well with a higher distortion that really came off that contrasting style there. But then we went with a more melodic style in the choruses. Yeah, it gave off a much better compare style, which I like. If you take a look at the singles like Habitual Decline and Year of the Moth or YOTM, you really get a good feel for this. However, where this does come with a downside is the fact that they stuck with this style for most of the album, to the point where you're gonna get that same style over and over and over again, and you're gonna get a slight monotony feel when you go through these tracks, especially when you start out the album. The first 3 tracks really do have this kind of a feel to them. So as I was going through them, I thought, you know what, this is starting to feel like the same over and over again. And while it's not bad, it's just something that really stuck out to me is just not that full entire dynamic sound. When I take a look at some of the other things that they did on this album, did they experiment with their sound? A little bit. They didn't go as crazy with experimentation, but they really kept it more drawn back. There's a couple examples where it worked and a couple examples where maybe they could have done better. Take a look at the song Demon on My Own. When you listen to that song, it's much more drawn back, especially in the verse, much more melodic with the slower, more depressed sounding grungy guitar work. But when you look at the drums, they're very dynamic, they're very fill-filled. I mean, they're everywhere. I like the idea behind it, but what I don't like behind it is the drums are so overpowering with their volume, it really takes away from the rest of the song in the end. So let's go to Burn and Water, Drown in Flame, where they had this more like Architects kind of vibe to it at the same time too, where it was still brutal, heavy, and hard, but it wasn't as wide-ranging angry feel, it was more concentrated feel. And I do like the way that it worked out there because you get a little bit of a different feel in there. Overall though, on the comps to Construction Instrumentation on No Eternity in Gold, I do like the fact that Like Moths To Flames really focused in on their core style and really put out that full-on metalcore anger that their fans are going to absolutely love, and metalcore fans are going to absolutely love. However, I think a lack of diversity within that constructed style and a lack of experimentation with some other styles kept this album from being great. So it really just kind of missed the mark where it was like, here's good, here's great. I think it just kind of fell in under that because of that fact. Now it's time to go to the vocal styles on No Eternity in Gold, and again, a very consistent thing we saw here, like with the composition, construction, instrumentation. When I take a look at the vocal styles on this, it was very consistent to have the brutally hard, unclean vocals in the verses, and the clean, more melodic style vocals in the chorus as well. And while that is right in Like Moths To Flames' wheelhouse, again, this is where the monotony feel came in. And one of the biggest reasons is you take a look at another album that came out on the same day with Post-Human Survival Horror by Bring Me the Horizon, with the incredible dynamic vocal styles of Ali Sykes on that. It was much different, and every song had a completely different feel to it. Where on this one, the vocal style with that consistent vocal pattern construction, it kind of kept that same monotony feel of the emotion within those songs. So taking a look at how most of the songs sounded, when you get to the verses, you're going to get that brutal, heavy, unclean vocal style that's going to really work well with the dynamic, heavy drumming and the fast-paced, down-tuned rhythm guitar, where the lead guitar has that higher distortion to it and kind of plays the contrast game off a little bit. I do like how that works. Then when you get to the choruses, you're going to get that more dynamic drumming style as well, but you're going to get more melodic and lighter style guitar work that fits in well with more of a melodic style clean vocal. Well, do not get me wrong, I do like how this sounds. The problem is when you get 7 or 8 songs out of an 11-song track that really kind of have that same vocal style pattern, it really starts to run together for me, and it's just something that doesn't stand out as well, again, as something else that came out on the same day with Post-Human Survival Horror by Bring Me the Horizon. Did they experiment on this album with the vocal style? At times, yes. When you take a look at Demon of My Own, you listen to it, and of course you're gonna get that more grungy melodic style in the verses with heavy drumming and with fill-filled drumming, I should say. But the vocal style is, again, more drawn back, more depressed, more grungy at the same time too, and it's clean, so you're getting something completely different. However, the overarching volume of the drums on this one, man, it just really drowned it out for me. And then take a look at Killing What's Underneath, and when I listened to this one, again, it was primarily clean vocal throughout the whole entire thing, but they were voluminous, they had some anger to them. It reminded me a lot of the spiritual successor to Nowhere Left to Sing, so I really could get into something like this. Overall though, I do enjoy the fact that Like Moths To Flames really focus in on their core sound, their core style, with the vocal pattern, where again, the fans are really gonna love it and metalcore fans are gonna enjoy it as well. However, the lack of experimentation, the lack of changing that vocal style up, really brought somewhat of a monotony feel to this album that again is preventing it from going from that good status to above the line to that great status. So that's where I'm looking at with the vocals. When it comes to the themes of this album, when we take a look at them, my biggest kind of overarching theme on this album when it comes to No Eternity in Gold by Like Moths To Flames is the fact that we are focusing too many times on evil aspects, and those are really drawing us back from certain things. Take a look at the song YOTM or You're the Moth, where it takes a look at focusing all our energy on government, putting all our happiness into what government is doing instead of focusing in on our own selves, and how that evilness of that will end up taking away from our own personal happiness. Take a look at Spiritual Eclipse, where it talks about how you are not as important as you think you are. It's a big shot to the evil egos that we have, and it doesn't allow us to enjoy certain things or be as happy as we are. Then take a look at the song Fluorescent White, where it talks about that moment in death where people see the light and you finally realize that a lot of the things that you focus on may have been more evil for you, and it didn't let you enjoy or really live your life to the fullest. So how does this work out with the song styles is the real question. And in my opinion, it does work out with the styles only to a certain extent. And the reason I say that is because with Like Moths To Flames, you're going to get that complete anger-driven style with the verses and the more melodic kind of chorus as well. Gives a little bit more of a realization of what is going on with it. So you're really going to get the feel of how this evil really focuses in on you, and how the realization of that can end up eradicating a lot of the problems in your life. However, I think the biggest problem is they focus on that same song style, that same song pattern, song construction so many times that the meaning of that message is really drilling into just like one style. It's rather narrow. It kind of comes in like this, to the point where if they went with a little bit more of a dynamic style and a little bit more of an experimentation style with certain things but kept that core sound, we could have gotten many different feels within those messages instead of just really focusing on one kind of style. So there was a little bit of trouble here. However, I do think they did hit it at some point. Alright, now time for my overall rating on No Eternity in Gold by Like Moths To Flames, and that is... I'm gonna give No Eternity in Gold a rather respectable 7 out of 10. So 7 out of 10. What I like about this album, and one of the major things I like about this album, were the singles that came off of it. And when I took a look at the singles, again, what it showed is that Like Moths To Flames, again, they were going with that harder, more upfront style with their style of metalcore, where you're going to get that, again, brutal hardness in the verses, but you're going to get that more melodic style in the chorus. But what really stuck out on these was the higher distortion on the lead guitar that was consistent in both the verses and the chorus. If you take a look at the verses, again, you get that higher distortion on the guitar, which is going to allow the unclean vocals to have more of a comparison with the heavier drumming and the heavier rhythm guitars, both of a contrast to the higher distorted lead guitar. Then the more melodic style on that guitar in the choruses really did stand out, in my opinion, because the cleaner vocals really did sit out on the front of that, while the more melodic down-tuned style also played more of a contrast game with the more dynamic drumming. One thing I like about this album is how the album ends with Spiritual Eclipse, because one thing I saw them do in this album was really play off with that higher distortion on the guitar, but what they ended up doing was they ended up bringing it in a certain way where it was higher distortion and it had a higher pitch to it, so you got a lot more of a lighter sound contrasting. But the way it was, it sort of brought this innate heaviness to it that almost every single track on this album had, that Like Moths To Flames has, and it really did stand out as a powerful thing, because you get that unclean vocal style in the verses, but that higher distortion just really brings out the contrast in that style, but it also matches up with that heavy feeling, just how the distortion is. And then the flip side with the choruses, yeah, the lighter style, the clean vocals really do play off well with the lighter tone, but the comparison and contrast when you get to the more rougher distortion of it really does make it stand out as a whole dynamic track. It ended the album in an incredible way. So what I dislike about this album, one thing is just the overall monotony feel that I've been talking about. Now, I said I like the singles for this because of the way the higher distorted guitar worked, but when you really went through the album, there were so many different times that they had this style of construction where the unclean verses really had this harder heaviness feel to them, not only in the drumming but in the rhythm guitar work as well. Then you go into the choruses where the drumming is heavy, the vocals are cleaner, more melodic, and the rhythm guitars and even the lead guitars as well had more of this lighter sound with a more melodic style to it. While that's not bad, don't get me wrong, it does bring a monotony feel to this album to prevent it from really standing out over the top of everything else that's gone on around metalcore around this year. And again, it just, when it comes to the delivering the message on these themes, it narrows them in too much in my opinion. So that's where a lot of the fault really lies with this album, in my opinion, is It's good, but the monotony prevents it from being great once again. The other thing I wasn't the biggest fan about this album, again, it speaks of monotony, is not taking as many chances with an experimentation style. What I mean by that is while they really focus in again on that heavy, hard-hitting style verse and the more melodic metalcore style chorus that they really do work on, it did work out well. However, there were times like on Demon on My Own where they changed it up completely and it still had that heaviness feel to it. And then working with more of an Architect style, at one time or another, it really did work out well because it gave the song a little bit more of a different, more concentrated, angry feel to it. However, again, really focusing in on their core sound so much, it ended up just limiting this album with its overall capacity. One of the biggest reasons why this is on here, again, it's a comparison to Post-Human Survival Horror, which came out on the same day from Bring Me the Horizon, because that album was so many more ways and dynamics than No Eternity in Gold was, where it just stood out too much. Again, this is all coming from the same exact release date, and it did shed more of a light on the monotony style on this album. However, it wasn't anything that it was too monotonous, like, it was monotonous, it was like, okay, can we just get something a little bit different at this time? Alright, time for my final thought on No Eternity in Gold by Like Moths To Flames, and when I really take a look at it, is it a good metalcore album? I can't deny that. A 7 out of 10 says it's a pretty good metalcore album, so I'm agreeing with a good amount of people that are out there. However, I don't think it is as good as it could have been due to the fact that it did stay in its wheelhouse way too much. It just focused in on what it was perfect at. It doubled down on it way too much to the point where we got the brutal, more hard-hitting, fast-paced verse style and the more melodic chorus style that these songs had, and it just ended up becoming a monotonous thing as you went from top to bottom. Again, it still has a good sound to it, don't get me wrong. However, again, when you're sticking in that wheelhouse, you prevent yourself from really going from good to going to great. I think they played a little bit too safe here. However, it still is a good album through and through. If you're a big Like Moths To Flames fan, you are going to really like No Eternity in Gold. If you like metalcore a lot, you're going to like this album. If you're more in the middle, you're going to be thinking that this album is okay, but it has a little bit more monotony feel to it. So it's all on personal preference with this one. However, I do think this is a good album. Will it crack the top 10 of the year as we're coming towards the end of the year right now? I'm not entirely sure, but will it be near the bottom? Absolutely not. This album does not deserve to be anywhere near the bottom. It deserves to be closer to the top on the 2020 list. And that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching and listening. This is Kevin from MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel. You guys know I am with the hat flip right off the noggin. See ya!